Hello, welcome to the Toon Under podcast. We are here to preview the Wolves game today. We've got Stu from the Wolves Fancast. We last spoke 2.5 years ago, Stu. It was in April 2022, and it was ahead of a tight 1-0 win for Newcastle at St James's Park. Wolves nemesis Chris Wood scored a penalty that day. I think you remember that you went to that game, I think, didn't you? So you probably had a nice climb down from level 7 after that one.
It's always okay climbing down. It's going up. I mean, last season when I did it, and I thought, can I do it anymore? Because I'd done it a few times where I ran to the top just to prove that I could. And I got 3/4 of the way up. I was quite surprised when my 40-year-old body could handle such a stress. But yeah, Chris Wood, I hate that man with such a passion. He did it again. Forest, of all the people to leave unmarked at the far post against us, and look what happens.
Yeah. It was funny when we talked about that 2.5 years ago, because obviously Chris Wood, I don't even think he'd scored for us up until that point, and he only scored 3. Yeah, he only scored 3 goals for us in total, but he was always reliable from the penalty spot. But I think that was his only goal he scored at St James's Park. So yeah, but of course, yeah, and it was. I didn't realize that so many clubs were terrified of Chris Wood. I know that Villa were as well, and there was West Ham that was the other one who he always seemed to score against. So. But if you actually look at his record since he's gone to Forest, like he's got a good goals to minute ratio. Have Wolves ever thought about buying him just to stop him scoring against them?
Yeah, we were linked with him quite a few times, and under Nuno as well. Funny enough, but then we got Raul Jimenez, and then look what happened there, and then again look what happened there, and we didn't have a backup other than Fabio Silva, but that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, it's interesting the way football works sometimes, but. When we last spoke back in 2022, we were talking about Fosun, the Wolves owners, and you were talking about the model. And at that time, you weren't, because I listened back to it the other day, and you weren't like really down on them, but you weren't super up on them either. You were just you explained what the model was and the link with Portugal and Mendes and all of that stuff. And you were talking about how the plan was for Wolves to run sustainably, so only money from the club that the club generated would go back into the club. And Wolves were a top half club at that time. And I think if they'd have won that game at St James's, you would have gone into the top 6 and with a chance of European qualification. I think things tailed off a little bit after that game. But since then, my kind of sense from I follow you and talk on Twitter sometimes and a few other Wolves fans is that there's a little bit more discontent around about Fosun now. There's been a couple of managerial changes. So can you kind of give me a potted history of the last 2.5 years for Wolves? And is that sense that the fan base are a little bit more discontented? Do you think that's a fair thing to say at this point?
Oh yeah, I think that's to put it bluntly, I suppose, because you go back to that point where it was under Bruno Lage, wasn't it? And we were coming off from. I mean, Nuno had run his time. These things happen, and under Lage, it was good to start with, and then. In that January, he was never backed, and we were at points we were pushing top 4, and it was mental. And then you think, okay, well, just a little bit of investment, and they committed to this new thing of when we had Mendes hovering around. We had that model of buying these young Portuguese players. We'll flog them later, and everyone knows how it works. But when a player comes up, we'll put a bit of money in. And then they didn't do anything that January. Things went stale, and he ended up. It was a rot of games where we went. I think we finished mid-table, like 13th or something like that season, and we started the season after no better. He couldn't turn the slide around, and we ended up playing Ruben Neves at centre half at West Ham away, which is a brilliant idea in anyone's. it completely lost the plot, and now he's back at Benfica now, unbelievably. And then we had the whole farce of the Julian Lopetegui thing where we chased him in 2016 when they took over, and he took the Spanish national team job over coming to Wolverhampton, which is maybe a decent thing to do.
Maybe fair enough, yeah.
But 6 years later, they finally got their man after we employed Steve Davis as a kind of interim head coach for a bit, who's a Wolves fan who was working in the academy, but his last managerial post was in non-league. In the National League, so that was obviously never going to work either. And we looked absolutely doomed. And then all of a sudden, Lopetegui comes in, and then we find £200 million where apparently we had no money. We'd been told we had no money at all. And then because they're assets, which is what we are, looked under threat. They found £200 million, bringing 47 million on Cunha and Craig Dawson, who's been wonderful, Sarabia and others. And then in that summer, he's expecting the same thing, and he goes on. They go on tour in pre-season, and he does an interview with Guillaume Balaguer, his good friend, who at the time I thought was harshly done with Wolves fans, because he's doing what any good mate would do, wouldn't he? I mean, it was blatantly obvious that he'd been lied to, and the club had lied to him. They'd sold him a dream, and they hid behind our good friend PSR as a reason why we couldn't spend. And then we had the whole thing of Ruben Neves being sold to Saudi Arabia for £47 million and kind of getting us out the shit a little bit, which they had created themselves. And the whole PSR thing was, my problem with it for years was, we all know how it works. The 105 million over 3 years, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But by them not putting money in, you can only lose 15. So it was, we were being self-sustainable, but they were selling a lie that we were under extreme problems, which was still the case up until 2 weeks ago, when it's a live podcast with with our local newspaper, that the journalist on there finally admitted, this is what has been happening, which is what we said 2.5 years ago. So I think it was more the case of the lies, and it's not even lying, it's just not telling the full truth and hiding behind this thing of, if you don't want to spend money, then fine, no problem. But then Lopetegui leaves, we have 5 days, and then Gary O'Neill comes and does a wonderful job. But then you look at this summer where players leave again. No, we couldn't turn down £40 million for Max Kilman. It was a great deal for everyone, but we haven't replaced him. And again, that was the whole point, that you sell and then you reinvest. We haven't bought anyone in central defence. And there's talk of, we got Yerson Mosquera, this guy who we got from Colombia or wherever 3 years ago, who was on loan at Villarreal last season, did well. He's come in. He could have got sent off in 2 games already. I mean, the finger issue is, I don't know what he's doing there. But the problem is we light at the back now, and yet we were told, oh no, well we all knew what was going to come, because we signed 3 players earlier in the window, and then nothing else until the last week of the transfer window again. And then we got this guy Andre, who we seem to pick the post of a lot of clubs, where suddenly out of nowhere we got £18 million to spend on him when we'd been told that we hadn't got any money again. So it's just a constant mistruths more than anything else, and the distrust, and the fact that they put season ticket prices up, in some cases 141% for under 14s, which
never going to go down well.
And to be fair, that one they did run back and said, we'll reassess next summer, and they're frozen prices for next summer ahead of time. But it's 800. I mean, you know what Wolverhampton's like. I mean, a lot of your listeners know what Wolverhampton's like. It's a shithole, and it's not.
Nani Madueke knows what Wolverhampton's like.
Oh, and we know all about him now. I mean, he was right. I mean, that was the point. He was spot on, and he took the piss out of us in front of the world. So he looked decent for England the other night as well, I thought, when he came on. But the whole point was, we're in Wolverhampton. We're not in London. We're not in Manchester, or even Newcastle for that extent. My season ticket in the Steve Ball stand that was built in 1979, as a 5'11" man can't sit down in there because the leg room's too small. So that's why I'm on the back row. Is 836 quid.
That's just scandalous,
And they know they can do it because we sold out again. And it was a 90% renewal rate. And so far this season, no game is sold out. The Newcastle game there'll be about 5,000 seats empty.
Really? Yeah, that's all right.
Well, so in person empty. I mean, they'll probably be 1,000 unsold. But this has not been the case before. And it's like, well, we know the demand was there when we were challenging for the Europa League and stuff like that. But they've kind of banked on that loyalty, and they've took it to the extreme where now they're fleecing people for the tiniest amount of money in relative terms. And the backlash has kind of started. And then we had the whole thing with the kit deal, and that we're making our own kits now. And are we going to see any money from that? Even though it says Sudo, it's owned by Fosun, who owned us. And complicated ways around these things again. So it's just a lot of distrust of not being told the full truth all the time when other clubs seem to get it right and we constantly do things wrong. I mean, we had a whole thing where Molineux's finally been painted for the first time in 20 years. And you saw on my Twitter the state of the place. Like things have fallen apart, and they're having to paint it by hand because it's in such a bad state of disrepair that they couldn't use machinery on it. It's had to be individually sanded down by people on cherry pickers, each rung of the support structures outside the Billy Wright stand. So it wasn't just about bollards; it was about the whole thing, and it's taking them forever, and it's going to cost them about 200 grand at least because it's been left this long.
What's the game for Fosun now then? Because last time we spoke, you were talking about how they had changed their colours to Wolves colours, and they had Wolves front and centre of their sort of portfolio of investments. So is that still the case, or do they ever communicate about what they're doing, or are they just not believed now, or what's the sort of story there as well? Because I know these people are not always easy to believe, and like you said, football fans are not stupid, so that they can see through lies and bullshit.
Well, we had a few things with the ticket fiasco in the summer. I mean, it was. I mean that I think it was 17% rise on average for people. And it's gone up. We're the only club in the Premier League that's gone up every single year since we've been in the Premier League, regardless. I think mine's 300 quid more expensive now than it was 7 years ago. And it's not even. We had a bit of success for 1.5 years, and then COVID happened, so it's not been sustained. But yeah, it's what they've come out. They don't talk very often. And again, the live podcast I was at the other night, they asked a question there of are Wolves up for sale? Are they tarting it up, tarting at the stadium up to be more look better from the outside looking in? Are they reducing debt to be sold like you guys were when Ashley didn't? There was no debt under Ashley, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it all looks very similar. And apparently, they were insulted by the suggestion that they were going to sell up. And the corporate colours did change to a shiny gold colour from blue, which they've used us as they own a Premier League club in the same way that the Venkies owned a Premier League club. And to be fair to them, they still put money in the Blackburn somehow and have the Venkies on their sleeve. But it looks like it's a promotional arm for them. And as long as we stay in the Premier League, that's all that counts. And that's kind of counted in the investment or lack of, and they only do it when this Andre guy that we talked about, Liverpool, Man United as well, sniffing around at times. João Gomez will be sold next summer, guaranteed, and he's a natural successor to that. Or we bought him for 14 to 18 million. We'll double the money on him, and we'll get maybe a third of that profit to spend on ourselves. It's just the way it is. But the only time they have talked or did in a way talk was the chairman, Jeff Shee. People started emailing him directly over the summer and about this stuff. And his literal response to one of the guys, Manny, great fundraiser, Manny Singh, if you look on. He was the guy who walked to St. James's last season.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about that,
Yeah, he great guy. And he wrote and said, "This is unacceptable. Why we don't not want this?" And he ended his responded email with, "Don't be sad, mate." That's going for the chief executive of your football club, and you think, how? For one, is this really him? Which then we had journalists saying, "Can you forward this?" Everyone. It wasn't just Manny either. It was loads of people. He sat at his laptop and just responded to people off his own back, and he seems like a crazy man. Like he doesn't. I don't think he's doing it intentionally. And we've heard from multiple sources as well that there were people in the club telling them not to raise the prices this summer, and that it'd go down badly, and he didn't understand why, and he did it anyway. So he seems like a bit of a loose cannon, and I think as long as we're okay and we're mid-table, they just let him get on with it because he's doing his job from their point of view.
It's so hard, isn't it, as a football fan to experience this, because we put so much of our hearts and souls into our clubs, and it's everything to us. And to see business people who are using it as a for a secondary gain is really tough to take. And you talked about Mike Ashley, that we had all of this. A lot of that is very, very familiar. Obviously, he wasn't like a conglomerate, and he didn't have all the other business interests, but Newcastle were used as a billboard for Sports Direct.
Yeah.
And that's
On the
why,
roof.
yeah, it was all over the roof. It was everywhere, and that's why it's so difficult to have that as a football fan. So, but you're right what you said as well. Newcastle were debt free, or we owed money to Mike Ashley, which got repaid as part of the purchase from PIF. So he did have the club in a sound financial state, even though the squad was not very good, and even though the stadium was falling to bits. This is obviously a theme as well with these people, because they can't make money from putting money into the stadium. But even so there was all of that happening, but you do have to say he managed the club well in a business sense financially, even though it was at the expense of ambition. Do you think there's merit in the plan to run clubs sustainably in that way? When you look at what's happened at Everton, you look at what's happened at Forest and the PSR and all of the dodgy dealings that went on this summer, and Newcastle were involved with that as well, with the Elliot Anderson transfer. And when you've got PIF's club running into PSR woes, do you think there is a benefit and a merit to running clubs in this sustainable way in this new era of PSR, where it does actually have teeth and clubs are getting points deductions and everyone's worrying about it now?
I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be brilliant, but football is the most morally corrupt, questionable sport in the world, isn't it? So you look at it and you think, well, from a personal point of view, great. You spend what you earn, you're not in debt. But by not being in debt and striving for something that you're probably not going to get hold of, you're going to get relegated eventually. And it's just the way it is. I mean, football it doesn't make any sense from a logical or financial point of view. In any other sport, any other business, you couldn't do it like this. It wouldn't work. And you look at the NFL. I mean, I'm a Jets fan, and that is what it is. But there's spending caps to an extent, and you can't put yourself in debt, and you can't lose a certain amount of money. But at the same point, if you've got an owner who wants to put money in, then why not let them? As long as there's a kind of balance where, I know they've talked about this on the brilliant Price of Football podcast.
Yeah,
where
it's brilliant.
If you've got owners who want to put money in, as long as they put a certain amount into a fund that then guarantees, ring fence it and guarantee that if the worst happens, that the club is not going to suffer. If people have got billions and millions of pounds, dollars, whatever, that wouldn't be a problem. And if that is the case, and you are lucky enough to be owned by someone like that, great. I mean, it's always been the way. It's always been the rich clubs spend money, and now this just makes the rich clubs in their own special little bubble and no one else can break into, and it's just bent.
And you've got to sell academy products, and I think a lot of these consequences of PSR, I think they're sort of byproducts, and I don't believe that the big six have sat down and said, let's devise this system to keep everyone else out. But I think they've obviously voted for it, and I think that's a natural sort of conclusion to it. And when you've got clubs incentivized to sell academy products, and Wolves obviously saw Morgan Gibbs-White to Forest, so they've had some big sales. And we did this really dodgy thing, selling Elliot Anderson for 35 million. We signed their Greek goalkeeper, who was useless, for 20 million back. You've got Villa putting their prices up for the Champions League, and everyone's getting very upset about that. But it just isn't working, is it? The current system, and I know they're going to change it to like a squad cost based system where you can have a certain percentage of your squad cost. But Man United posted their financial figures yesterday. They've lost over 150 million more than the allowable 105 million over a 3-year period. But they're not going to bet, they're not at risk of a points deduction because it's exceptional losses. It's all Chelsea is selling hotels to themselves, it's all just so opaque, and nobody knows what's happening. And I think you need Nick DeMarco on the case. He managed to save Leicester, didn't he, from by looking at some of the wording. But here we are on a football podcast, talking about PSR, and it's just sad, isn't it, that's what football is now.
I mean, the fact that it's so much worse now than it was 2.5 years ago when we started talking about this, when it was brought in, and you think, well, it clearly doesn't work. And I know the whole squad place, the 500 million, and then that might work, but it can't be as bad as it is now. And like you said, you mentioned Everton and the constant catastrophe that place is. And I mean, one of the funniest things in the world is going on Everton Twitter and Everton Spaces after they've got spanked. And just hearing the same guys over and over again at breaking point. But it doesn't work. And it, like, you look at when we were growing up at this, you look at the 90s where, you had money into John Hall, we had the Jack Haywood, and Blackburn had Jack Walker. And you look at local boys, put the money in, no problem at all. It didn't get us anywhere. We didn't get promoted until 2000. Did he sell up 3 years later? Something like that. It didn't work. It's not a guarantee of success. And as you know, you full well know, it wasn't a guarantee of success, even with that points lead. But it's everyone knows where they stand for that point of view. I mean, there's only so many footballers in the world anyway. Not everyone can sign Kylian Mbappe, can they? So I don't see a problem with it. If as long as you ring fence it, then fine. But this doesn't work as it stands now. And the fact that Nick DeMarco, like you said, finding loopholes because the Premier League are inept and they can't do their job properly. And the fact you can spend money, but if you get relegated, it doesn't matter. So
Yeah, that was about the fact they got relegated 2 weeks before they posted their financial loss, and they weren't classed as a Premier League club anymore. So like this, and if you listen to the Athletic podcast, they do some really good stuff, like some really interesting, and they kind of explain it in a explainable way, in a way that's understandable. But it's a bit of a mess, really. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's talk about some football. Gary ONeal. He came in, and it's probably fair to say he wasn't the most popular choice. Maybe it's because he's called Gary and he's not like a sexy foreigner. But he had that like PE teacher moniker for a while. Like it's kind of hard for people like him to shake that off, and it's not really very fair because he seems to be quite good tactically from what I can see. I don't know what he's like at coaching or with the media, but how's he been? Like, what was the reaction when he did come in, and how's he been for Wolves? Because he's had some not too bad results over the last year or so.
Now, I thought it was a joke at first because you go from, like I said, about the Lopetegui thing where we chased him for so long and then it all broken down, and then to replace someone who's won the Europa League and who's managed Real Madrid and Spain, and then you get Gary ONeal who was sacked by Bournemouth that same summer. And I thought, no way, surely not. And then you came in and it was really bad. And you look at things. I mean, I was at Ipswich that night, and they were booed off the pitch. We lost Ipswich away in the Carabao, and we all know when you have starts like that, like what Koeman had at Palace. Not Koeman.
De Boer.
Frank De Boer at Palace. 7 games in a row, lost, sacked.
Yeah.
You very rarely see a turnaround from a place so dark and poor. And nothing was clicking, nothing whatsoever. And then we played Man City and we beat them at home, as we tend to do occasionally, which again doesn't make any sense.
Completely from nowhere.
Yeah, completely out of nowhere. Beat Man City 2-1, and that was the launch pad for the season. And he's tried before. Many coaches have tried before with his back four thing at Wolves. Ever since we got promoted, we've played the back three since 2017, and a lot of them players. There's Matt Doherty left. Everyone else has gone, but 3 at the back has been embedded into us from Nuno's first pre-season. It just seems something that doesn't work for Wolves. And last season we played predominantly with a back three, the kind of this weird hybrid thing with Ait-Nouri on the left, and Totti Gomez, where we could occasionally go with a back four and he'd push on. But tactically, I think Gary ONeal's, considering it was his first full season as a manager last season, he was very impressive. And again, wasn't backed in the summer. We ended up getting rid of John. I was going to say Bod Voss, and then that's a Newcastle goal scorer from the past. But tactically, I think Gary ONeal's, considering it was his first full season as a manager last season, he was very impressive. And again, wasn't backed in the summer. We ended up getting rid of John. I was going to say Bod Voss, and then that's a Newcastle goal scorer from the past. We ended up getting rid of Sashi Kalajic, to the guy who did his ACL, and then he did his other ACL on loan because he just couldn't force his way into the team, and he'd been out for so long. So he went on loan in January. Fabio Silva, who's a disgrace to football, he got sent out on loan as well.
Rangers, he went to, didn't he?
Yeah, and he couldn't do it there either. And he's now at Las Palmas for the season.
40 million well spent there.
Oh, it's just.
And that was the days before 40 million was actually like normal, like it is now.
Well, I don't even think he's not even going to make it. It's going to end up with 35 because he didn't even make that many appearances for Wolves. So it'll be 35 million quid on the nose. It's just a waste of space. I mean, he had some talent, but he's just not got the application for it. You can just see he just can't be asked. But still, he was a striker, and we didn't have many of them. And we haven't since Raul got his head bashed in. So we got rid of both of them in January, which then led to, obviously, we had Matthias Cunha and your mate Hwang. And other than them two, we didn't have anyone else. Neto played half the season as is the want, which is why I won't really bother about him going to Chelsea, because he's unreliable. And then they all get injured at the same time. So we had a 15-year-old child on the bench against Coventry in the FA Cup, and you think, well, this is yet again poor planning, and because of that, we were playing kids who were nowhere near ready, but we didn't have a choice. And he still managed. I think we won 1 in 11 end of last season, and that was against Luton at home. And you look at it and you think, well, that's not Gary O'Neill's fault, really. When the people did start coming back towards the end of the season, they were nowhere near match fit. So he kind of got if you take the first part of the season where we were top half and pushing, and it was an outside chance of something, maybe Conference League, maybe. He wasn't back, to then look what happens. That's not on him. And I think you look at this preseason, we did well in preseason in America. We signed a few exciting players, and then we go to Arsenal and do well under the circumstances. But then you look at that Chelsea farce, and you think, but that again, the first half against Chelsea was one of the best performances and atmospheres we've had for years. And it was all, maybe it was the Noni Mweki thing because of what he'd said, and everyone was fired up for it. But we looked okay, but we looked very open. And since then, Forest, he went back to kind of tried and trusted back 4/back 5. And I think that's what he'll do again. So he's naive, but he's a young manager. So you kind of take the rough with the smooth with that kind of thing. I wouldn't want any. If he left, we would be in serious trouble because what he's done for certain players. And I mean, Cunha himself, Brazil squad now. João Gomez, Brazil squad now. When the fact that Wolves have got 3 Brazilians being called up for the national team is insane. And we've got Jürgen Strand-Larsen. We've got a target man again, which is what he wanted. And they've kind of, in a way, they've given him what he wanted, but in another, he's been restricted. And we're so close to getting all of the kind of pegs that he wanted in place. And yet he's going to have to circle and square it again in certain circumstances. So it's, for him, he's done great, but he's been limited by what he's given again.
Which is obviously a theme from what you were saying as well with Lopetegui, but that's it's really good on him, for turning that round. And it's not easy, like you said, to turn around when you're down, and when the fans are against you and when nobody's happy. That's really good effort. And I've seen him be linked with Liverpool job before, so he's obviously got something. He's got a reputation in the game for being a good coach. You talked about the summer transfer business. Wolves sold Pedro Neto to Chelsea and Kilman for more than 100 million. So that's money in. Signed a couple of Brazilians, and obviously they signed a Portuguese player, which it's Wolves, so that's what happens. Signed Sam Johnston as well, goalkeeper, and Tommy Doyle from Man City, and there's been a couple of loans as well. An obvious focus on bringing young players in. So what's the current transfer strategy, and has it changed? Like, is Mendes still around, or how come there's less Portuguese action going on now?
I don't think we can afford it anymore. I think that's. I mean, Mendes was still involved because he obviously represented Neto as well, so he's still there. But we've somehow out of nowhere managed to get this kind of thing in Brazil going, and we got Pedro Lima as well, who's a young kid at right back who probably might play 3 or 4 games this season, I'd guess, because we've still got Semedo. But he's on massive money, so I wouldn't imagine he'll be here this time next year. And he's got a kind of natural successor there, but being bred in through the course of the season. I think that's what's going to happen with him. But it does look like get players in who've got resale value, and that's not really changed from that point of view. It's just where they've come from that's changed. And obviously they're still Portuguese speaking, so it does follow through a little bit. But we have gone more towards I said about Craig Dawson, who's been an absolute rock. I wish he was even 5 years younger than he is, because
he's mid-30s, is he now? He'll be mid-30s. Yeah.
And he's never been the quickest anyway, so that doesn't really matter. But he's reading of the game, his leadership, he's everything that we didn't have at the back against Chelsea. So he came in at Forest. That's normal. He came in against Burnley in the Carabao, but he came in against Chelsea, against Forest last week, and a couple of weeks ago, and he was absolutely solid. So, and the Sam Johnson thing, which was bizarre because Jose Sarr's been whatever he is. I love Jose Sarr. He's not all there. So you do know you are. When he dropped 7, he was looking at the stats nerd stuff. He was responsible for 7 goals conceded last season. But at the same,
like a lot for a goalkeeper.
But at the same time, he was the most in the goalkeeper post shot expected saves thing. He was top of the tree for that. So he'd saved us 8. So you juggle one with the other. And what do you want? Do you want a calming influence, or do you want a maverick who can potentially drop one? And Gary O'Neill's obviously thought, well, no, we want calmness now. And they've brought Sam Johnson in, and he was a bit ring rusty to start with at Forest. And I know the Albion thing, I don't really care. It is what it is. He's not. Why we were linked to Aaron Ramsdale, who I don't like. I've never liked him anyway. The Albion thing with him is different because he's an Albion fan, and he's very vocally rubbed it in our faces that he is. But I don't think he's very good. I think that was the problem there. And you look at, he's gone to Southampton, and he was responsible for at least one of them 3 last week. And Sam Johnson's English. He's cheaper. I think we've probably got the better end of the deal. But now we've got number 1 choice for the last 3 years is now apparently 3rd choice, and he's not even going to be on the bench now. So something's happened behind the scenes there. But I think, the strategy seems to be buy him young with a bit of resale value and then a bit of experience on the cheap if we can. And that's where we are.
And that's good as well. If you can sell someone for 40 million plus every summer, then that's good. And that's kind of what Leicester did for all those years. They had a big sale, but then they were they'd screwed their wage bill and stuff as well. So they were they were not being run in a responsible way. So Wolves' form this season you've touched on as well. There was the loss to Arsenal, which is pretty standard. There was that bizarre game against Chelsea where I think Wolves actually had a higher XG. I don't know if you're a fan of XG, but that's that shows that it wasn't a 6-2, it wasn't that a game that should have been that scoreline. There was a draw at Forest and beat Burnley in the cup. So it's been quite a tough start, but the fixtures have been quite hard. What's the general feeling about how the season has started?
Yeah, I think we were almost punished for within the one club that opposed VAR in the summer. And you'll probably, it was there against Burnley, so I'd imagine it'll be there on Sunday. And if they'll focus in on it, there's a guy in the South Bank who's got this massive tifo, just saying 19-1. And that's all it says. Yeah. And that's what it is. That's what it's about. And so they give us the worst first 10 games in Premier League history. If you look at the start that we've got. So I think no one's on his back. Everyone accepts it is what it is. It's the kind of Millwall mentality of no one likes us, we don't care.
Yeah, siege mentality.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of dragged us through a little bit, and that did drag us through against Chelsea as well. And the funny thing, that game was ridiculous. The second half, it was a collapse like we haven't had for a long time, and it was the same goal over and over again on that left-hand side. That Ryan Aït-Nouri is great going forward. He's not a left back. He's a decent enough wing back defensively, but as a full back, he's atrocious. Totti Gomez is decent on the left-hand side of a back three or a backup left back. He's not a centre half. And both of them on the same side of the pitch against a guy like Madueke in form. Look what happened.
Cole Palmer, yeah.
Yeah, and Cole Palmer. We just tore apart. And these things happen. We remember when we lost in the Championship about 15 years ago when we lost 6-0 against Southampton at home. They had 7 shots, 6 of them went in. And we played them off the park that day, but every time they got on the break, they scored. And it was one of them days when they got a standing ovation at the end. But that was a complete freak. This was a collapse, and there was no answer for it. And they weren't booed off, but there was only about 10,000 left in the stadium anyway at full time.
Yeah, everyone was in the pub. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at some of the recent fixtures between Wolves and Newcastle. This game used to be 1-1 every single time, and that hasn't happened as much anymore. So before, these are the last 5 games. There was the 1-0 for Newcastle over Wolves, which is when Chris Wood scored last time we spoke. Then there was the 1-1 at Molineux where St. Maximin scored that equaliser with an assist from our mate Hwang. Who I think Hwang might have scored in that game to begin with, or maybe it was Neto or something, I can't remember anyway. But yeah, that was 1-1. There was 2-1 later that season, which was where Isak and Almiron scored, and that was an equaliser from Hwang that day. So that was a big win for us because it was just after our bad run and we needed to get back on track, and that was a good one for us. There was the 2-2 last season, which was probably, we were quite lucky actually to draw that game, even though we were leading twice in it. And then 3-0 wasn't really a 3-0 either. Wolves had a lot of the ball in that game, and we just took our chances. I think we did have more chances in the game, but it didn't feel like a 3-0, and we adapted our tactics for that game as well. So what about those games stands out? And it looks like there's a few more goals anyway than there used to be between these clubs, where it just sent everyone to sleep.
I mean, I saw your Twitter feed, and there was other Newcastle things that I saw as well. That everyone from we hate this fixture. You guys seem to hate this fixture, but that's from that 3 or 4 year spell where it was 1-1 all the time. And I had the same thing on my phone here because I was surprised when I got it on there 11v11 that I was surprised that it was like it was, because that's the narrative of this game being so bad, and why does Sky keep picking it? And I know we've had the issue where maybe the keeper could have got sent off at St James's under different circumstances. And there's been other weirdness going on. I think
that was with Jimenez, wasn't it? When Pope took him out. Yeah. Because Jimenez was involved in something for Fulham as well, where he got sent off last season.
He lost his mind.
I remember thinking we were lucky to get away with that in that game. Yeah, when Pope took him out.
Yeah, and I think last season was just that 2-2 was it. I mean, it was a weird game because we did feel like we should have won it, but yet because we'd been pulled it back twice, it was like, well, we've done the bare minimum here. It's been an entertaining game, and I think that was on our run of just getting a footing in the league because we hadn't really done much. So, I mean, the away game, I think we didn't turn up. I know you said it was the 3-0, but we just didn't turn up that day. We did go to Chester Street though. That was a good day out.
Oh yeah, that's not bad on the way. Yeah,
so we had a few beverages in Chester Street, remarkably cheap as well, considering even for now. But yeah, we just didn't turn up, and that has been one of the things under Gary O'Neill. I know we mentioned that Chelsea game, but there has been times where if it's not just a case of one person not being on it, there's about 5 or 6, and you can't carry that many players being off form in one go. But we've mentioned it quite a few times. I don't think Hwang's even going to. He won't start. I wouldn't imagine he'll start. He'll more than likely be on the
Leo
bench.
Hwang Messi, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at your. I got you to send through a predicted lineup then. I was quite pleased to see that Hwang isn't going to start, even though he's obviously not that good. It's just one of those things where players have a bogey play, but like you with Chris Wood, where Hwang just scores. He scores every single time he plays against us, and he's just a typical South Korean who runs a lot, really, and he doesn't have a massive amount of quality, but yeah, he always scores against us. So I was very pleased that he wasn't in your lineup. So what can you tell me about this lineup?
With Hwang, he is one of the most infuriating players we've had for a long time, because he has periods where he's unplayable and he looks great, and then he gets mobbed like Son does at Spurs. There's pictures every week when he's there, and there's hundreds and hundreds of Koreans that line up outside the Billy Wright stand up the hill, just waiting just to meet him after the game, and he stays every week. Fair play to him for that. But
Good on him.
he has periods where for 2 or 3 months he's brilliant, and then the rest of the time he's absolutely atrocious, and he can't trap cement, he can't do anything. He's Hwang. But you look at this lineup, and you got Semedo, who's been. I mean, he missed the first 3 games for a weird sending off at Liverpool in the last season, and he came back in against Forest, did well. Yersin Mosquera, we've mentioned that he's gonna get sent off this season. There's absolutely no way.
Sexual assault's not allowed on a football pitch.
Because we were in the opposite corner of that at the Emirates, I didn't even see that until we got back on the couch afterwards. And because there was no real uproar because it's the Emirates and everyone's too well, you know what they're like there. So I thought, well, no one reacted to it, and there was a bit kicking off, and to kind of choke hold someone and then try and finger them in the same game is a bit bizarre. But then Craig Dawson, we mentioned, a rock, and then Totti Gomez there on the left. If you look at this system, if Aït-Nouri, I mean, there was talk about, I've put Aït-Nouri up front there because this is what Gary O'Neill was talking about in the last game. It could easily be Aït-Nouri where Cunha is, and he'll cover as a makeshift back 5, and then Cunha will be on the right. So that I was just putting there for the sake of it because that's what's been talked about recently. This Andre guys came in. He came off the bench and he already had a song at Forest, which is again strange. Mario Lemina is called Catty now, so he'll start in the central midfield. And João Gomez has been a bit of a bulldog terrier kind of cross in midfield for us since he came in. So I think we'll go 3-man midfield like that just because we need to get a result. And we were more sturdy against Forest, but that's Forest. I mean, we can't be pissing about against Newcastle, can we? So, and I mean, Strand Larsen needs a goal. He's got all the attributes as a big Haaland-like Norwegian. He runs himself into the ground. He just hasn't had a lucky break yet, and because we are Wolves, we don't create many chances. This is the whole point of going to a back 4 in the first place. It hasn't worked yet, but he just needs one. He's running, and he just needs a header or something to go in, and I think he'll be up and running. But you look at that team, and you think it looks weak defensively, and for Wolves, that seems bizarre, considering what we've had over the last few years. Well, we've been defensively sound first off, and then we'll scrap around for anything we can get up front. But now we look so front loaded that it's the opposite.
It would be interesting if it is a 4-3-3 kind of system, because that's what Newcastle generally tend to play. So we have got Fabian Schär back, which is really good news. We've had Kraft playing in there, and he's done quite well, but Schär is good on the ball, so it gives us a whole different dimension with attacks. Livramento has been keeping Trippier out of the team, and he's been good. He scored against Wolves last season, obviously, as well. Left back could be between Lewis Hall, who's been good for the under-21s, or Kelly. And I think Eddie Howe likes Lloyd Kelly for the solidity, especially in away games. So I think that's what he'll do, and Kelly will probably tuck in into the back 3 when Tino goes forward. Bruno and Joelinton will definitely start. And then you've got Tonali, who has just played 2 full 90 minutes for Italy, and he got an amazing assist. I don't know if you saw that one, but that was brilliant. So I'm not sure if he's going to start this because Eddie likes Sean Longstaff, but you look at the quality and the fact that Tonali's just played 2 full games for Italy, and I really think he's got to be starting, really, and that creates a pretty strong midfield. We've got Gordon, who's better off the left, but the alternative would be to put Murphy on the right and drop Barnes, but Barnes has been good as well. He's scored against Spurs, so he's better off the left with Gordon on the right, and then Isak. And to be fair, looking at that Wolves defence, if Isak's on form, and again, he's had a good international break, I think he could get some joy from them, and especially his pace against Dawson. So what do you sort of think when you look at that Newcastle team, and where is it that Newcastle could hurt Wolves in the game?
I mean, you look at that Newcastle team and you say 3-0 Newcastle, but
I don't say that.
I was completely wrong about Anthony Gordon. I didn't get it. I said to you on Twitter at the time, I don't get this move. I'd seen him in the flesh at Everton. he looks okay. I didn't get the hype. I was completely wrong. He's fantastic. I mean, you look at him against the other night again, playing for England, and you think we had him in the summer. Look what we could have done. And yet again, the usual happens.
I don't think Southgate liked the fact he was. He did interviews and he didn't say anything bad, but he's a bit different from normal footballers. He doesn't just say stock phrases, and I don't think Southgate liked that. And Gordon's got high standards and he demands a lot of himself and his team, and Southgate obviously didn't like that at all. So I think that's what went on there.
He's very, very Southgate being the anti-Maverick. He's a kind of. I mean, you look at. He didn't like Maddison. He didn't like Grealish that much either. And you think, people who are a bit outspoken, that probably makes sense, actually. People who are outspoken, who've got an opinion about things, who are not going to necessarily stick to rigid tactics and be happy being bored. And Gordon and obviously Barnes is going to do us as he always does. He's got a history of that with Leicester and obviously, again, for his time down the road. So, and Isak speaks for himself. I think it just looks like a top 6 side looking at that. And the obvious ones are Burn and Shaw at the back. And I don't know about Nick Pope. He's very, again, probably like Sam Johnson, very dependable. But I would have imagined he'd been upgraded by now. I don't know if I know you've got John Ruddy, so that possibility.
Yeah, John Ruddy's the upgrade. Yeah, no, we were screwed without Pope last season. He got injured. He did his shoulder, and then there was a huge drop off to Dubravka. So the main problem with Pope is his distribution. And in football now, really, to be a top keeper, you need to be able to pass it. But so he kind of boots it long and he boots it out of play. But his shot stopping is excellent, and I think he sweeps up as well, certainly better than Dubravka. So that's made a massive difference for us to have Pope back. But yeah, probably in a year or two, I'd say he'd be upgraded. Depends on if we want to change the way we play and become more of a possession team. We'll definitely need a different goalkeeper.
I mean, that's what kind of sums up the Jose Sarr situation as well, because he was like that. His passing was like 30%, and over. I mean, short passes around the penalty area now, but I think he did one at Man City away when we got Dick last year. But that's going to happen there, but overall, it wasn't as bad as people think. Like the usual long ball that went out of play for a throw in. It was it's going to happen because he's a keeper. He's not a midfielder playing in goal. I don't get that. That's another topic for a different day. Playing like that, it's a bugbear of mine, as you've seen. But shot stopping wise, he was as good as anyone last season, and this season there's been all this rumours about goalkeeping, and I'd rather have a goalkeeper who's actually saves shots rather than passes well. For me, but maybe we're just old.
We were brought up with 90s football, so that's what we think, But I agree with you about the current trend, and I think I blame Pep for that. Really, like everyone has to play tiki taka, and it's boring, to be fair. But I'm sure Man City aren't complaining with all the stuff they've won.
No.
What about predictions for this then? What were you thinking before, and has anything we've talked about or looking at the teams changed anything? What do you think it's going to be?
I mean, if we were as solid as we were at Forest and we cut out the silly mistakes, I mean, the irony is that we've got a set piece coach now, and we've been worse at set pieces than ever. So, in a traditional Wolves way of doing things, if that can be sorted out and we can cut out set pieces, especially with Isak, I mean, almost begging for a 1-1 after all the torture of the last decade. But I think I can't see us winning that game. Put it that way. I don't think we're ready. I don't think we've got enough yet playing this kind of back 4-5 hybrid that we've played for the whole of pre-season. If we went back to our tried and trusted of 3-4-3, then I'd be more confident. But this, I'm still a bit trepidatious, especially looking at the pace and power that you've got, and with Tonali and Jolinton as well, bullying them in midfield. And with the fact that we've got all these Brazilians, and they have flown half the way across the world, and I know it's the same for everyone else. But Tonali's a special player, and what happened to him is it is what it is. He doesn't need to go into it anymore. But I thought that was a bit of a coup when you got him anyway. And if he's as on form as he looked in that in them games for Italy, then I think we're screwed. And I think,
he's looking sharp.
I think it's going to be a long whole day for us. But then again, we just need a bit of fire, and we need to get some points on the board. So optimistically, I'd say one each. Realistically, realistically, I think we could get a good hiding.
Well, Newcastle have not been convincing this season at all. So we've had players who had been playing in the international tournaments in the summer, and Gordon's looked rusty, and Bruno hasn't looked his usual self. Isak as well, until he scored against Spurs. But I think they will benefit from these games they've had for international teams. So yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to start seeing a bit more of a coherent Newcastle now. And obviously we were slammed with injuries last season, so we didn't get a chance to see this midfield too much. So I think I don't think we'll lose as well. I'm confident of maybe a narrow win. So maybe I'm going to say 2-1. We'll see what happens. It depends if Leo Messi Hwang plays or not. That's the main thing. And before we finish, I just want to mention, last time you told me about a podcast that you did about when you're talking about films, and you had an American guy on reviewing The Football Factory, and I listened to that, and it was so good. Like an American who obviously who's just like, what is this? The Football Factory, absolute nostalgia blast for me. So I would very much encourage anybody who's interested to go back and listen to that. But that sounded like a lot of fun to do that one.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he still brings it up now. I mean, I speak to him quite a lot. Funnily enough, he came over here and he slept here in my gaming room when he came over to watch us, and he even came to Palace away, the lunatic. So, from here, which is saying it all, but yeah, he was a good sport that night was, and yeah, we still do talk about films, and when we're talking about one that I watched last night that I'd never heard of before, another Nicolas Cage film that he was in, a Scorsese film. Who knew about that? Bringing Out the Dead, that no one's heard of. Yeah, no one's heard of it. It's got Tom Sizemore in it as well. Ving Rhames doesn't exist apparently, but it's there. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But we've started talking about games as well, and game specific episodes and music specific episodes, and we obviously talked about. We did an Oasis special last week.
Yeah, good one. Did you get tickets? Did you manage to get tickets?
I was 20. Let's just double check. I was 28,000 in the queue at one point. And we had two coaches go to Forest, and we was in the lovely town of Ilkeston beforehand.
Yeah,
and we got 3/4 of the way there, and then most people were in the waiting area. I mean, I put the ballot as well, and I have got an email, but for what's happened since, I don't think I'm going to bother now. But as soon as it went to the dynamic pricing thing, I thought, nah, I have in this. So I just jumped out. But then we talked about Oasis for a couple of hours, me and my Andy, who's on there. And so we got two Oasis fans and one guy who likes metal and Metallica and Linkin Park and all that kind of stuff. So it was a fun, weird interaction that day was. But yeah, if you want to listen to three guys from Wolverhampton talk about films and Nicolas Cage and any kind of geeky nonsense, then Cage Fighting is the place to go.
And definitely the American Nate wasn't it, who reviewed Football Factory, because even English people, that film is just crazy. So for America, it's even crazier. So Stu, thank you very much for your time. That's been excellent. I'm sure we'll catch up again at some point soon. And good luck for Wolves for the season after Sunday, of course. And we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, Jack. Always a pleasure.
Cheers. See you.